you have many coaches and parents who distinguish incorrectly what a good player is versus what a dominant player is. And the age groups that I'm specifically talking about are 8 to 13 mainly, but this can also prolong to the ages of 8 to even 16 or 17, but mostly 8 to 13 because that's a little bit harder to distinguish. And it's something that I've always thought for years. This is not something that just dawned on me. And it's not just it's regarding teams and players. Many times people come to me and say, hey, this team is good, or hey, we played a good team. And I always used to ask, do you mean a good team or do you mean a competitive team? And obviously, on the surface, you're like, hey, what's the difference? But I want to explain, especially at the ages of 8 to 13 and sometimes even older, this distinction is very important. And it's why so many people predict certain players to become good and they end up not becoming good, and why some players are kind of seen as like okay or middle of the pack compared to those other dominant players. But later, the difference between them is so stark, and the player that wasn't seen as that good ends up becoming amazing at the elite level. And I even saw a video of where one of the FC Barcelona, I don't remember his role, but he used to say that there was a time where they would look at players who were 15, 16 years old, and they predicted that those players would become pros, and they would always get it wrong. And the players that they didn't think would become pros actually made the first team. And so this is prevalent everywhere, not just in America. But for me, regarding team and player, this is what I have. I have competitive team, I have good team, and then I have dominant player, and then I have good player. So a competitive team wins games. They're at the top of the league and they win most of their games, but it's outcome based. So people look at the scores, how many wins they have, how many trophies. If that's all you look at, for me, that's a competitive team. A good team can also win games. They can also be at the top of the league. They also win a lot of they can also win a lot of games. Not always, but they can. But this team plays in a way that develop players who will become top players later. So it's more process based. You're looking at the process of the team. So you're not just looking at the outcome. Oh, they scored a goal. What was the process that led up to that goal? You're not just looking at a player dribbling two players. You're looking at what was the process that enabled that player to dribble two players. What type of dribble was it? And that's the difference. Same thing with the similar differences with the dominant and the good player. The dominant player visibly impacts the game for everyone to see. They look like the best one on the field, and it's because they're getting the outcomes, the end result. They're scoring the most goals, making the most tackles, making the most dribbles. Whereas a good player, you may not even notice him. And he's building good behaviors and a way of playing that will pay off later at a higher level, at a much higher level. So that those are the difference, but that I'm focusing on today. So one is process based, one is outcome based, and I want to give an example of what that means because many times it's hard. I've never heard anyone give a clear description of it, and it's so hard because you really have to see this is not something you can mark on statistics and say, "Oh, this is the right player." You gotta see the nuances in the game, and this is what makes it so difficult. I'll just take a dribbling example. You have player A and player B. Player A and player B, let's just say, to make it even harder, they're both fast players. They're both athletic players. Player A beats four defenders. Player B beats four defenders. Now let's look at player A. So when player A beats the four defenders, it's at one speed. Many times when they beat players, it's at full speed, top speed. There's no change of rhythm. There's not much of a side to side movement in their dribbles, but nonetheless, they beat multiple players. They dribble multiple players. Player B beats the same amount of players. And statistically, if you look at the dribbles, it's exactly the same. But this is what statistics doesn't tell you as of yet. Player B can slow down before they beat a player. They can slow down and then they can accelerate. While they're dribbling, they can look around. What's happening? Which side is better to dribble, the left side or the right side? Which side is better to dribble? Am I only looking at the defender in front of me, or am I looking at the defender behind me? How is his body position? Where is his body orientation? How is his stance? Maybe I can dribble on his same side, but I got to look at the variables. If it looks like the body orientation of the second defender is going to play against me, if I beat the first defender, then I'm going to go the other way. But that requires looking up while you're dribbling. And then I'll fake one way to go the other way, but to set him up so that I can come back the way that I actually wanted to go. And what it really is, it's that player B is taking in so much input before he makes a decision, because ultimately the player that can take in the most input has a better chance of making decisions. Obviously, it's important input. It's not just input for the sake of input. You have to know what input is important and what is not. But if you have two players who look at a situation, look at a small area of the field, one player takes in 2 pieces of information, the other player takes in 6 pieces of information. By and large, the player who takes in 6 pieces of information will make better decisions than the other player because there's nuance. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean by that. So with player B, there's more variation in how he's performing a skill. Another one is shooting. You have one player who just does power shots, power shots, power shots. Maybe he scores 30 goals in the season, but they're all just power shots. And many times they're straight at the keeper. Keeper can't do anything, but they're just power shots. Then you have player B who got 2/3 of his goals in the season, but there's a variation. There's volleys, there's power shots, but there's also placement shots to the corners. There's also chips. And this is what I'm talking about when I say the variation. And this you cannot track this by statistics. If you look at this, especially for kids, and you say, hey, who's the better goal scorer? It's actually the player who scored less goals, but there's a variation that will play in his favor as he gets older. And one of the things that I want to, and this is why it's so nuanced, get into this. In the dribbling example, this doesn't mean that a player who does more tricks is the better player. It's the player who can take in more input and therefore varies his technique based off of that input. Because you can have a player who does all kinds of tricks, all kinds of skills, but the only input he's taking is the defender in front of him and nothing else. Even though he does all these tricks and skills. So in that case, he's doing skills, but he's taking in he's taking in less input to make his decision. So a player with fewer moves can still be a much better player. And it's about and this is going into the foundation of the game. And this can be even in skills such as passing, for example. the player who is able to do a larger variation of passes, taking in multiple input to make his decision, is the better passer, even at the younger ages. Maybe, and this is an issue too at the younger ages. Sometimes a player just doesn't have the power in his pass that another player does. And you have to be very careful of that too. Maybe it just takes him a longer time to swing his foot back and then get to the pass, whereas another player can execute that pass quicker. And a lot of these have to do with growth and maturity. There's a number of things. And I'm going to make a quick point before I go into the story, but this is not to say that athletic players are not smart players, are not intelligent players. It's just putting it out there that you have to know the difference. But I like to put this story on regarding a rec team that I saw play a week ago. And this encapsulates what I'm saying perfectly. I saw a 2015 recreation team in Allen, and I saw three players that caught my attention, three attacking players that caught my attention. And I say three attacking players. I was looking at defensively, or the players defensively, and I saw a good player in another game where the best player was a center back. So it's not just that I was only focusing on attackers. In another game after, I noticed the defender as the best player by a distance. But back to this game of the 2015, I saw three attackers that caught my attention. I'll list them as player A. Player A caught my attention first. Then player B caught my attention, and player C caught my attention last. So at the beginning of the game, I put A as the best player, B as the second, C also a top player, but he was the lowest rank of the three. So this is how it is for like maybe the first 10 to 20 minutes. I don't remember exactly when my opinion changed, but I initially I was judging it off of dominance initially. But the more the game went on, I put player C, which I previously put him as the lowest rank, I put him as the highest rank. Then I put player A as second and player B as third. So this is the worst player, not the worst player, but the lowest rank, because none of them were bad players, but the lowest ranked player as the highest ranked player initially after putting him as the lowest. And the more the game went on, the more time passed, I saw that the player that I initially put at the lowest was miles above the other players. He was in a different stratosphere. He was seeing the game in a way those other two kids couldn't even imagine. And this is what I'm talking about. So was he necessarily the most dominant player? No. But when you look at the game and I saw how he was varying his play and how he was deciding how to execute certain skills, I was like, my God, this guy's a special player. What is he doing here? He's a rec player, but he just has this natural tendency to know this instinctively. And then now the question is, will he get a coach who is able to continue to develop him? So now he's like 9 or 10. But the question is, okay, where is he going from here? And I have and to come to a conclusion soon, I have a player on my team, 2017. So I think they're about 8 to 9, if I'm not mistaken. And our most dominant player, in my opinion, he's in the middle of the team. He's in the middle of the pack. He's not the top player. His athleticism lets him get away with a lot of things that are dominant, but they're poor behaviors to continue to rely on. And our best players on the team are not as dominant. And not only that, they came to me and I put them on the lowest level team but through time, they got through the highest level team and they are actually the best players. I do have one player who's a really good player. He was always on the top team. Um, but he cannot get away with his athleticism. Can he does he have mobility? Yes, but he can't just get away with his athleticism. And this is because their game, when they dribble, when they pass, you can sense when they shoot, you can sense some variation in how they play. So when they perform some type of skill, it's almost as if they're taking in multiple pieces of information before executing on the skill, as opposed to just saying, "Hey, there's a defender in front of me. I'm just gonna push the ball by him and run." And again, this is not to say that athletic players can't be good players, because I have an athletic player, a super athletic player, who is very coachable, and he always takes multiple inputs of information, near, far, left, right, body orientation, all of that stuff. Such a smart player, and he learns so quickly. But he's super athletic, very fast, very strong. But I make sure that he doesn't get away with those bad habits. This is a different athletic player than the one I talked about initially. So it's not it's just that you have to know the difference between the two, because eventually we all know players that were not as athletic end up becoming more athletic. So you can't rely on your athleticism as much when you get older. And if you have coaches who are not able to distinguish this, then at some point that athletic player will be 14, 15, 16, and his game can't change because you got to undo his habits. Good luck undoing habits. I've heard of coaches try to do that before. You can try and it works a little bit, but trying to undo behaviors that are so ingrained in them, because before you teach new habits, you got to undo bad habits, and then you got to teach the new habits. So until it's ingrained. So that's a very, very difficult one. Some questions I just want to go over if you're a coach is, when you look at your team, are you confusing your most dominant player for your best one? Are you confusing your team's record for development? I mean, how many times as coaches we just say, "Hey, our team won this tournament. Hey, we didn't lose. Hey, this." That's it. That's the context. That's the extent of the context that we see. And then everybody thinks that's development, but there's no context. And are you using outcome evidence to answer questions that should be process based? Are you just looking at the final result and ignoring the specifics? I mean, I would even recommend, if you're having difficulty with this, to record your games and really break down actions that are happening and outcomes that are happening. And many times too, another thing, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but another thing too is that you have to be very careful when you get in new players. And I say this because tryout season is happening. You have to be careful when you're judging players quickly, because you may have a player who is behind now, but their ability to learn and take in information is far better than another player who is ahead now. So that's something you also have to be very careful about. But other than that, that's all I have. Stay tuned.